Iha cheda vedi datha satyamasti na chediha vedin mahati vinashtihi bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitya dhiraha pretyasma lokadamrita bhavanti. Iha cheda vedi datha satyamasti na chediha vedin mahati vinashtihi bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitya dhiraha pretyasma lokadamrita bhavanti. If you have not by hearted any part of the text, at least by heart this verse, this mantra. At least this one get by heart. Now the verse says, or the mantra says, if one knows that, iha means here, then is truth established. Satyamasti. If not known here, it is the greatest loss. Mahati vinashti. Vinashti, in fact, nashti is loss. Vinashti, great loss. Mahati vinashti, it is the greatest loss, my dear. What? If you have not known that truth, iha, here, in this birth, if you have not attained the goal of realization, it is the greatest loss. Bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitya dhiraha. Having reflected through every element, dhiraha, the wise, having risen from the world, become immortal. Pretyasmat. Pretya means having risen. Asmat lokan, from this world. Amruta bhavanti, become immortal. Iha chedavedi avedi, has known. If one knows here, satyamasti. If you have not known, bhati vinashti. Having reflected that through every element, the wise have attained, have risen from this world, become immortal. My God. I don't think any one of you have an iota of a clue as to what this mantra is saying. Don't have a clue. We don't feel the gravity of the message in this verse. We are not able to feel the gravity of the message in this verse because we don't feel the loss. Have we? Are you feeling a loss? And here it's saying it is the greatest loss. So the gravity of the loss, Gayatri Ma, let's say the cap of your pen is lost. Is it a loss for you to worry about?
No.
Not at all. What is there? In fact, I'm okay with it. So the gravity of the loss is felt proportionate to
Our attachment to it.
your attachment to the value of something in your life, isn't it?
Yes.
Whether you may attach a value of it or not, but independently it has a certain value, isn't it? Like the value of your pen is different to the value of your phone, vis-a-vis the value of your car, the value of your property, and so on, isn't it? You may say, I have no value for property. That is your mental state. But independently, it has a value, isn't it? And also, there is a value for the self. The self is the highest, isn't it, in all of this? Ilya,
Yes. Self is
you may not understand the value of the self, but the self is of the highest value. Are we right in the argument? Correct, huh?
You cannot even fix a value. It is much above everything. Like
It is much of, but even just to say the value,
yeah.
where it's not how much value I give it, but each of it in life has a certain value, isn't it? Rajima, do you sit and moan that you have not realized yourself? Do you feel the sorrow of having lost yourself? Of not having realized yourself?
I should be feeling, Guruji, but I know I'm on the path, so I don't feel that deep sense of sorrow as yet.
Oh, you are on the path, that we know. But I'm only trying to get into the spirit of the verse. He says, it is the greatest loss if you have not realized yourself. And we all have not realized ourselves. It means we have lost ourselves.
This life has been wasted.
Don't go to the end of it. We're just completing the statement. You have finished the statement. Do you feel, if you have lost something, isn't there an anxiety or an urgency set to get to know where it is? For example, you misplaced your, let's say you went for a function. You had to wear a necklace, let's say a valuable necklace. You come back, you're tired, you took it off, you put it somewhere, and you don't know where you kept it, and you want to put it back in the safe, in the locker, example. But for a moment, there's a certain blankness. I have actually kept it on the dressing table, but it's not there to be seen.
There's an agitation.
There's an agitation. Isn't there an anxiety to find out because you have lost it? And that anxiety comes to us when you regain that which you have lost, isn't it? Now, if we go by the degree of the values, self is of the highest value, isn't it? You may not know the value of it, but just to put things in a hierarchy, the self is the highest value. But if I don't feel that I've lost something, it's because I don't know what I have lost. Therefore, there is no urgency to find the self. Therefore, we are very comfortable doing everything else except the need to get back to the self, except to search the necklace which I've lost. I don't know that I've lost the necklace. Will you go and search for the necklace? Will there be an anxiety in your mind? Because you don't know that you have lost the necklace. So the verse brings in such a level of anxiety. It raises the emotion. It raises the awareness to such a level. I said, my God, do you realize you're losing the most valuable thing? The most valuable thing in your life is yourself, and you have lost it. It's mahati vinashti. What a loss, what a loss. You don't realize, even as I'm saying, I do not know whether I'm able to do justice, to inject that, the gravity of loss you are experiencing right now. I am experiencing, I'm party to it. I'm experiencing that because I have not realized it. I have not got back what I've lost. But is there a sense of urgency to get to know yourself? I don't think so. Let me not be very.
Guruji, you normally use the word suffocation. Is there a suffocation?
Yeah. Yeah, very true. But the sentiment here is that we should feel that sense of what is that word I was using just before? Yes, sir. You wake up tomorrow morning, you go out into the porch, your car is missing. What is the anxiety you'll have, Harishji? Your car is missing. Would you say, oh, let me have my breakfast? Sunday morning breakfast is idli, sambar, vade. I will have, and then I will go and find out where is my car gone. Would you do that? Or what would be your action?
I would try and do things to redress the loss in my own mind. What I feel I could do.
Before breakfast, after breakfast?
Sadly, before.
What's the interesting part is he said sadly, that part is the connect between me and Harishji. You would not bhaad mein gaya khana. You say, go to hell with the food, man. I need to find out what happened to my car? Where is it? That kind of urgency the verse is trying to inject that spirit. Rest of the verse is just pedantic. It's just poetry. But if the verse can inject that sense of urgency, because you don't realize you have lost something the most valuable, and you're sitting in such comfort, and let me,
If I may say,
yes, please.
when you realize you have lost something of a higher value, then those things of lower value become less important, just like in desires or anything of that sort. When you get into the higher, the lower falls away. So similarly,
Yes.
when there is a greater loss of the car or the anxiety of the apparent loss of the car, the other smaller things like breakfast and all that fall away and you don't realize it.
Momentarily, at least for that moment. No?
Yes, Guruji.
I tell you, yes, Rishi. I tell you that the emotion here is very, very heavy. The Guru is trying to inject that sentiment. I remember what was the kind of feeling I had when I first heard this mantra. It really hit me so hard. I remember that night I heard in ashram, and I was just so much overwhelmed with this thought. Unfortunately, you don't know the value of your loss. Therefore, you're not having a heart attack, or you're not having any anxiety attack. Just get a news that your family has met with an accident. Just the news that met with an accident. Everything will just drop and you will rush. Just trying to make you realize what it is that you're losing. All that you have developed an attachment to is something you acquired in the course of this journey. The family you have acquired, the material wealth you have acquired, the name you have acquired, all the punya you have acquired is all in this janma. But to be born as a human is not something you acquired in this janma. That's what the great Adi Shankaracharya in the text Viveka Chudamani, he says the proportion of an animal to human is to 1 is to infinite. Remember that. To be born as a human is 1 is to infinite. That means the infinite possibilities you could be born as any other creature out there. But if you're born as a human, you have done humongous sadhana. You've grown so much to come to this level of a human birth and of human beings. In fact, it's only a human being that can conceive something beyond the terrestrial, can conceive the transcendental. No other creature The most magnificent of creatures cannot. Like as usual, yesterday night I was watching a little bit of TV and I was watching my favorite program, Animal Planet. I was lost by watching a program, a documentary on tigers, and they are really the king of jungle, and it's the majestic. Even the best of creatures in the animal kingdom, no clue of a transcendental, no clue. You can pick up the panda, or you can pick up a giraffe, or you can pick up a peacock, the most beautiful. None of these creatures can conceive the transcendental. Only a human. You can be the most dumbest of human, the most illiterate of human, but yet it's only a human being has the chance of conceiving the self. And you know what you have done to come to that state? And having come here, you are not fulfilling the very purpose for which you're born. The very purpose for which you're born is to realize yourself, and you're doing everything else but that. And the only thing that is protecting you is your ignorance. Fortunately or unfortunately, you do not know. Therefore, you are in comfort with all that you're doing. So the first half of the mantra, he states it. So if that is known here, Satyam asti. In fact, the word Satyam has a true meaning here. Satyam asti. Iha cheda vedi data Satyam asti. Na chediha vedin mahati vinashtihi. You have lived a life of Satyam, truthfulness. If you have not realized, we are not talking of the effort in the first half of the verse. He says the first half of the verse, he says, this is the state. You've got to reach it. If you have not finished, Bhati Vinashti. So that is there, that element of loss. Is that thought? It must be so heavy that it must pin you down. It must paralyze your activity. You can't think of any other activity. Must this, like every other activity stops because you want to get to know the news of your loss. You want to know the inquiry, the safety of your family. Your family has gone out station and the news comes. Your family has met with an accident. Doesn't everything come to a halt, a grinding halt, until you get to know what is the state of your family? So must everything else take a backseat until you get to know the self. And it's not today or tomorrow you'll know. Your whole lifetime you may take to get to know yourself. But is there that spirit in us to get to know the self? And that's why I said, I don't think so. If there's one student out there, you are my guru. I consider you as my guru. If you have that thought in you, my frustrations to you. Ashtanga namaskar to you. And if you are able to inject that, because that is the satsang I am seeking. If you can remind me and I can remind you, you are that satsang to me. Otherwise, it's dussang. You are not the right company for me. It's a waste of my time associating with you because you're not reminding me of getting to the self. You're only reminding of everything other than that. I have got nothing to do with it. It is wrong company for me. That is what the scripture is saying. If you can remind me of that opportunity and the loss, you are my guru. And that is the job of a guru, to remind you of your purpose. You are meandering in the world, entertaining yourself with every other entertainment, but finding out what is the purpose you come here. Don't realize, man. In his own very sweet way, he's giving us a serious whip. He's whipping you up to realize what you're losing. You don't, even as I'm saying this, you don't realize what you're losing. Oh my God. Do I realize the gravity? It has taken me 30 years to realize what is the gravity of this statement. You may take 2 years, it may take 6 months. It doesn't mean it must take that long. You may be at a very high level. I'm only saying you need to put aside everything else just to examine the statement and inject that sentiment and that spirit, what the verse is trying to say. Not easy. It's like when your building is under fire, all you want to do is to save yourself. Nothing else matters. You bought a beautiful leather couch. Are you thinking of your leather couch? Go to hell with the leather couch. I want to save myself, man. You're looking for the staircase to run the flight of stairs. You want to save yourself and the family. Nothing else matters. It is that kind of urgency, that kind of emergency you must operate. And it's not that you create a panic around everybody. It is the urgency of thought to get back to the self. That is what we are saying. It's not that you create a panic and anxiety around. Only take certain aspect of the example. The example is only trying to tell the priority in your life must be to realize yourself, and you don't have that. Now, there are 2 references. Please write down this. Hariji, if you can just capture it for everybody so that we get that actual reference. First is from St. Matthew, and the second is from St. Luke. St. Matthew says, he that findeth, Findeth, he that findeth his life shall loseth it. Loseth. He that findeth his life shall loseth it, comma, and he that loseth his life, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall findeth it. It is just that language, but findeth is find, loseth is lose. If you replace that for your convenience, you'll get it. He that findeth his life shall loseth it, comma, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall findeth it. St. Matthew. And the next is St. Luke. For whosoever will save his life, for whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever will lose his life, for my sake, the same shall save it. St. Luke. Think of these 2 phrases for the next 1 week. And come back to me and tell me, Guruji, I have been only thinking of this. I'll see how many of you don't get tired for 1 week. Yes, St. Matthew 10:39, St. Luke 9:24. You're right. Amitama. Just read St. Matthew and just make sense of it for us. At least perhaps you read that phrase, sorry, please read that sentence and then explain to me what this findeth and loseth means. Please read that phrase now, please.
He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it.
Perfect. Now, what do you understand by the word findeth?
I'm going to try, sir. He who is focused on his achievements and desires.
Don't read from any text, please. You talk to me. Don't see the text.
Okay, so here it is about when we are focused on, let's say, material gain and material success. When we feel we have found it, we actually lose our true life, or we lose ourselves. And the second part is when we are able to give up our desires or our attractions to this material possession for my sake, i.e., I guess God here or Brahman, then we find it. In other words, when our focus is away from the material, we are able to find ourselves. So like you said, it's like the fire, borrowing from the self, getting close to the self through the shastras, through the knowledge, and being able to borrow the fragrance of the self, and therefore be closer to being able to realize yourself. Everything else falls away. Everything else is not an occupation anymore.
Yes, you're very, very true. You're very right. Let me get Balaji, are you there? What is your understanding of findeth?
Yes, sir. I think it's rightly said. If we go after the material acquisition of material thing, you will lose it. The next one is basically talking about the negation process. The more you lose, the body, mind, intellect, then you reach. So it's basically talking about negation process. One is acquisition, is going after the material world. Acquisition after acquisition. Second is negating. Negating is actually a spiritual part. You're losing everything. So that's what it clearly said here.
Very good. So he that findeth his life shall lose it. Findeth here is one who is seeking the world, as you said, the extroverted life. You're running behind what the world has to offer: name, fame. I remember the famous words I kept hearing again and again. What are the things you run behind in the world? Name, fame, power, position, family, money, status. 7 things that you run behind in the world: name, fame, power, position, family, money, status. He that findeth his life. In your life, if you've got name, fame, power, position, family, money, status, you gloat at all these things. You have got involved. You say, I've got a lovely family, so nice, my family. You gloat at it. Not only my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law also is gem of a person. You're gloating at what you've got in the world. If you have fulfilled yourself with reference to the life, he that findeth his life, you're complacent to the self. You have this petty, hollow feeling of satisfaction. He that findeth his life shall lose it. Lose it, you have lost the self. Mahati vinashti, you have lost it because you have renounced the higher for the lower. You renounce the self for the world, you have gained the world, but you have lost the self. If your whole life you have invested in this pursuit, you have lost the self. Mahati vinashti. But what have you gained? Only the mere worldly things that has to offer: name, fame, power, position, family, money, status. This is what you have gained. These are your riches. You're rich outwardly, but inwardly you're a pauper. You have lost yourself. The second half of the statement, he says, and he that loseth his life, means if you have invested your time, your life, your energy, your resources to get to the self. If you have invested your time in recognition of yourself, means your life is consumed with that desire to get back to yourself. So he that loseth his life for my sake, he qualifies it. For my sake, the my here refers to the Atman or the self or realization. If you have invested your life for the sake of realization, he shall find it. You renounce the lower for the higher. The first half of the verse or the quote, he says, you renounce the higher for the lower. The second half, he says, you renounce the lower for the higher. And the same thing is conveyed by St. Luke as well. And if you do this, then you are living a life of Satyam. And Satyam is to be true to your conscience. As we learn, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. You should not be content with anything but the self. And it is an extraordinary thought to accommodate that I will not compromise for anything but the self. So everything may come your way, but you say no. As Balaji was saying, negate, neti, neti, keep saying neti, 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 not this, this is not it, this is not it. I want to only think of the self. I only want to get to the self. I'm only interested in the self. Nothing doing. It's almost an obsession. It's an obsession to get to the self. I cannot inject that. I can inject the words. I can't inject that spirit. I can't help you conceive the goal of realization. That is my inability. No guru can. It's just not my inability. I can't help you conceive the goal of self-realization. Someday you got to envision that goal, and then you'll understand what kind of a loss it is to lose opportunity. You remember the story of that Mahatma? I've shared it in some context before. Of a Mahatma, a very elderly person, who had a very peculiar way of teaching his students. He used to obviously share his knowledge in satsangs, but he used to always do things which were never understood by his students until they sought clarification, and he explained what that what he intended. And on and off, he would disappear from the ashram for a few days, and they were only hoping that the Swami would come back unnoticed, without any prior notice rather. He would disappear from the ashram. So suddenly the Swami was missing. The only students were waiting in anticipation that the Swami would return. 1 week passed, 1 month passed, 2 months passed, there is no news. Then they started inquiring in the nearby villages and vicinity, and where is this person? Because then the people knew in the nearby villages in the vicinity about the Swami. But nobody has ever seen him in the recent past. Meanwhile, this Swami has traveled far distance from the ashram, and he finds himself in a small, neglected, deserted, broken hut. He was staying there. He found his shelter there, with broken, torn clothes, hardly presentable, just the outskirts of a village. And all what he used to do, as I've said, this Swami was known for his peculiar behavior. So all what he used to do was, it was a hillock area, and there were many boulders around. So what he used to do, he used to push a boulder from the foothill right to the peak. And it's not easy. To climb itself is not easy, but he used to, in that frail body, he used to struggle and struggle and struggle, and somehow manage to reach the peak with the boulder, the peak of the mountain. Padminima, what he used to do end of the day? I'm sure you've heard of the story.
Then he lets it go. It rolls down. With what effort he has put in to reach that level is lost in just 1 minute.
A fraction of a minute or a few seconds, he goes to the top. By the end of the day, it reaches the top, and then he just kicks it away, and he has a heart full of laughter, laughs and laughs and laughs, slowly comes down, exhausted, emaciated, and the villagers used to leave some food there. He would eat and sleep. Next morning, the same ritual continues. The villagers thought this fellow is a mad fellow, and they left him to his fate, because this fellow is not disturbing us in any way. Let him carry on with his madness. People used to get entertained, but every day seeing the same thing, they felt this fellow is a cuckoo case. They left him. Until their disciples came in search, and they inquired about their Swami who does peculiar things. He said, no, I do not know if we are Swami, but we know one mad fellow who is outside the village. We'll take you there. And they find that this man was there. And they fell at his feet. So, we are waiting for you, Mahatma. What are you doing here? And Sushma Ma, and this is what the Mahatma said to his students upon describing what the villagers said, what this man was doing. And there was a message for mankind that Mahatma was trying to teach. Can you guess what that message is, Ma?
I'm not sure.
The message was, you have put in humongous effort of pushing the boulder up to the mountain, and having reached the peak, you're just kicking away the boulder just for a moment's laughter, seeing how the boulder tumbles down the mountain. He got some kind of entertainment out of it. The Mahatma is saying, you do not realize how many janmas you have put in effort to even be born as a human being. And having reached this point, you're kicking away the opportunity of a birth of a human just for some pleasures, for paltry pleasures you get out of what you get from external acquisitions, possessions, name, fame, power, position, family, status, all this entertain you, and you're entertaining yourself, feel you have achieved the purpose, you achieved, fulfilled your purpose of life. What a waste, what a waste. Just to convey that spirit, the Mahatma was trying to put it in his own innocuous way. Sushmama, is it not so? Is it not? Don't you see a parallel? Don't you see a connect? What the message is?
It's a message for all of us.
Indeed, Ma. Indeed, it's a message which should resonate and resound with all of us. That have I done justice to this opportunity? Have I done my part? Isn't it? So it's a very, very powerful message in the verse. Very, very powerful. So whether are we experiencing that loss?
Yes, Guruji, but experiencing it at the end of your life. But I think I wish I'd experienced it much earlier when I was a younger person.
No, it is never. It is never.
And then I could
when.
have made greater effort to reach this.
No, it's not. There's nothing can be done of what has happened. There's so much that can be done. What's happening now, and I know you're doing immense of what's happening now of this experience. This should count, and it is counted. I know that. So all matters is that, you know. But if I am able to carry that, if I'm able to convey that sentiment of the grief you should experience, the heaviness you should experience of having lost yourself, I think that's all the verse is trying to say. So the first half of the verse, he gives us the state, and the second half of the verse, he gives the practice, the sadhana. Having reflected through every element, every experience, every stage of your life is only, as the Shastras say, everything is nothing but smitten with sorrow. Everything is nothing but sorrow and sorrow and sorrow. It's not being pessimistic, but nobody realizes that their entire life is only with sorrow. And you don't realize the sorrow because of your own acclimatization. You're so neutralized, acclimatized to your sorrow, you don't see life as sorrow. So having reflected through every element, the wise risen from this world become immortal. Asmad lokad amrita bhavanti. So all you need to do is inject that sense of urgency and emergency, a sense of suffocation, a sense of restlessness. You should feel that I would not want to waste a moment. If somebody comes and tells you tomorrow is the last day on this earth, what would you do? Don't you understand? I don't have time left with me anymore. There's no more time left. And there's no guarantee of life. As Bhajagovindam says, Nalini dalagata jalamati taralam tattva jivita matishaya chapalam. Life is like a drop of water or lotus leaf. Any moment it can fall back into that sheet of water. There is no guarantee how long you will live, I will live. But The least I can do is ensure that this moment counts, this opportunity counts. And as and when you do this, there is a certainty it would continue that very same way. If I have kicked an opportunity now, your next janma also is waste. Mahati vinashti. If I have done enough, the next janma gives me an environment where I could grow. If I don't do it now, I don't create the soil for future. Because everything in life, birth and death, is only change of experience. Nothing else changes. Everything, the content is the same. The container has changed. The content is the same. So if you have instilled that fervor, that vigor to get to the self, the thought of the self, whenever the inevitable happens, it will just carry forward. So don't be like the masses, lost in the world. Rise, be like the Dhiraha, having risen from the world, you become immortal.